Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley. Frank is my fiance. Let me introduce our guest. Her name is Debbie Weiss, and Debbie Weiss turned to writing in 2013 when she lost her partner and high school sweetheart of 32 years. She's an award-winning author. She has just written a memoir, As Is, a midlife widow's search for love about creating a new life and finding hope after widowhood. Her writing's been published in the New York Times Modern Love column, and if you haven't read that, it is an absolutely delightful column, and she's published for the Huffington Post. She is a former lawyer, and in 2020, at the age of 56, she started writing. I want to introduce my partner here in crime. His name's Dr. Frank Powers, psychologist of many years, working in the Phoenix area. We're going to talk about finding hope after widowhood, because I know a lot of you that are listening to the show are thinking about your widowhood, you've had a loss, and maybe moving along a little bit and wondering about what you're going to do with your life. Finding hope, right, Debbie? Well, welcome to the show, Debbie.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I was listening to some of your podcasting and some of your shows, and I love the way you talk to guys about dating and about widows. Your husband has been gone for what, 9 years? Is that correct?
Yeah, about a little over 10. Well, first of all, my book is available as is. So it's called Available As Is. It's like real estate.
Frank and I talk about the fact that when you're filling out a profile, you need to say, this is what I want.
Oh, yeah.
As is, because when you're younger,
you're not trying anymore to impress and get as many respondents as possible. You want the right respondents. You want to waste time.
I agree completely.
So tell us about your trajectory. What have you done since your hubby died? What was his name?
His name was George.
George, since we lost George. And as I said, my husband, Phil, passed away 3 years ago. So I'm fairly new in the widow world, but I didn't end up there very long.
She didn't waste time.
I was going to write a book on widows, and I decided I had to I got ghosted by somebody who I was dating. Frank laughs when I say ghosted for the seniors.
Yeah.
It's a very hip term.
Generation X.
Anyway, he didn't email with me anymore. And I was going to write a book on widows, and I decided I had to do a chapter on online because this guy had told me that he'd been very successful online. I went online, and the second person I met in Arizona, where I was staying with my sister, was Frank.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of an amazing story. So I'm all big on online. Now tell us what you've been doing since George passed away, and what's your trajectory?
Well, I lost George in 2013, and we led pretty isolated lives. So I needed to kind of figure things out. I'm a retired lawyer. I'd retired at 40 in 2001. So I hadn't practiced for 10 years. I don't have any kids. And I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? So I did a bunch of different things, yoga, and started writing and joined some writing classes, which led to my getting a master's degree in writing in 2020. I was 56.
Yeah, I love that.
And I did a book. I put my book together and worked with a great editor, and that came out last year, 2022. I've actually been partnered for 5 years. And I moved in with my second person into a new home in a new community a little over 2 years ago. Before I'd been in the home, I lived in with my husband. So so I dated for about 4 years, and online, mostly online. I met people, and it was pretty slim pickings.
Now, where did you meet your guy that you're with?
Online.
Oh, you did? Okay. So it was successful.
Ultimately, it was successful.
But when you say slim pickings, I think one of the important things to remember for everybody is we're only looking for one person.
You're right. No, you're right. You just need the right person.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
When you go online, I've noticed with people, they kind of change, they dress a little better. They look around when they get in a restaurant to see who's there. They kind of tell their brain they're
Different
dating.
mindset, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes Frank and I have seen that they'll find people at class reunions and stuff because suddenly people know they're dating, which is kind of cool. So not everything's online, but
Yeah.
online is where most of the action is, right?
I found it to be so because I do think it's a bit of a numbers game. People say yes and no on that, but I do think, it helps to be able to meet a great many number of people. Now, the other place I've met some nice men, none for me, but really good people, were hiking groups. I'm a big hiker. And that's helpful because you meet people in a natural, undating, unfake setting, and they're just being themselves. But you don't meet, the number of people you're going to meet if you're online. The fellow I'm with is somebody I'd never would meet. We live a half hour apart. I'm kind of a geeky writer. He's a professional ski instructor, very athletic. When I first met him, I thought, yeah, this is a couple lunches if we're lucky. We did bond over grief because he'd lost his mother fairly recently when we met, and I'd lost my husband. And that was great, but we never would have met otherwise. But it turned out, though, even though we're so different, our values were kind of aligned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we really hit it off, which surprised me. So that's the one thing, is that element of people you never would have met otherwise. Definitely.
Don't you think that the values issue is a pretty big one for compatibility?
I think it's almost everything, or it's certainly your baseline. I mean, first, it sounds shallow, but attraction. Do you like this person when you meet them? Are you thinking, hey, this is great, or I need to leave now? And there's a lot of dishonesty with photos and all. But I think the values are super important because, so many people, I wanted a commitment. I knew that's what I wanted. Ultimately, I wanted to have, for a while, I was wanting to date a little, have some fun. So I'd married my high school sweetheart. So I never did the things people did in college. I never dated in college. I was very committed, both to my husband and to becoming a lawyer. So I was a real fun person.
That reminds me of something. Frank and I have both said that we would not have married each other originally.
Oh, we met in our 30s. We would
Never
not have been compatible at all. We did change. Yes.
Yeah, but as time goes on, you're looking, I love what you said about commitment, because I think that's one thing that's really different about seniors is we really do want commitment.
I think so for the most part. Now, I was dating when I was 50 to 55, and I met a lot of guys, in that age range. Some a little bit older than I am. And some of them really didn't seem to want commitment. They seemed to want to relive their youth. I don't understand how an almost 60-year-old man thinks he's going to live like a 20-year-old, but that did seem to be something that people were into.
There is the midlife crisis. At 50, really, in a sense, are afraid of losing their virility. And so they're a little bit more like 20-year-olds again.
I saw a lot of that. It was pretty unappealing. I personally had my midlife crisis in my late 30s. I did get a sports car. I stayed happily married, but my job was kind of killing me. I'm not a corporate lawyer kind of person, but it was interesting to see these guys who were real immature. And I think what was helpful was to saying, I want commitment, putting that in my profile, and just basically.
That's very smart. And I think it's really great advice for people to be careful about what you put in your profile and make sure you put in the fact that you do not want these 20-year-olds that are in 50-year-old bodies.
Yeah, worst combination. Yes,
Yes.
Definitely.
Deadly.
What you mentioned age. Let's talk about age. What did you find? I have so many women tell me that, they have all these people that are 10 and 15 years older than they are,
Wanting to date.
Yeah, I did find some older men. I did get some people in my age range. The thing that surprised me the most was a lot of men, they're looking for fit women, slim women. And, when I was dating and all, I was fit. I'm a big hiker. I'm a big yogi. And I would see a lot of men who really expected women to meet standards that they themselves did not meet.
Ooh, you're really touching on something big. That is really true. Men are looking for things that they're not willing to give.
But,
Yeah.
but tell her why. Frank has a theory about why men are doing this.
One of the things that I found in my practice, and I think it's generalizable, is that men are really wanting to have a woman in their life that impress other men more than sometimes the interest in the woman. They want status with other men. So the woman that's on their arm is probably more important in terms of how she looks or how she might appeal to other people than what's inside her. And I think it's a huge mistake on the part of men to do that.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that is a problem. That this sense of trying to kind of get somebody who's sort of an aspirational dater. I think we date, kind of looking for sort of the fantasy. And I think it's also that, there's so many choices. We see ourselves reflected in the people we date. And sometimes what we see reflected isn't what really matters. When as an example, I'm a lawyer. My dad is a scientist. And when I was dating initially, I was looking for people with very high professional kinds of profiles because I wanted somebody who was very objectively successful. And I realized later it was because I didn't feel successful.
Oh,
Yes.
I needed
Making
somebody
up for a deficit. And I think that's what men are doing. Yes.
so I was kind of doing that professionally. And then I realized that, just because this guy is objectively successful doesn't mean he's going to be a good companion or a giving person.
Some of the people that we worked with, will help you fill out your profile. One woman in particular is 70. He has to be 6 feet tall and very successful in business.
Yes.
And it's like, I said, well, what if he was 5'8" and a school teacher, a retired school teacher? Would that be okay? No. I mean, this attitude to start with, that you're going to pick this ideal guy from.
And your point about it may be to make up for deficits in yourself, not necessarily project onto the person, well, I want them to be something I'm not.
I think we see a lot of that because, I actually do see, I live in a small town that has a lot of older folk, and I see a lot of people who've met up later in life and are couples, and they're not stunning people. They're normal looking people for their age, and they have normal kinds of jobs. I think they've just been more open, and they're just more lovely as people because they're usually radiant and they're smiling, and they found each other later in life. I know my partner and I are so grateful we found each other later in life. So time's a big deal for us. And you see just people like that, and it exists, but it isn't the aspirational Golden Bachelor stuff. I watched the intro for that and I almost barfed.
Funny you should mention that. We've been doing some work with the Golden Bachelor.
And we feel the same way you do.
We do some show assessment, but it's fun. But I'll say one thing about the Golden Bachelor, and Frank and I have said this. It's really great to see them having older people, even though they picked, it does open
They're
it.
Cherry picking, yes.
We've got this huge cohort coming in now. Why don't you talk about
post-war baby boom and the fact that we're all living 30 years older than we did in 1900 makes a huge number of people in this cohort that now are getting into that senior place where you have lost a spouse through either death or divorce, and you're alone, and you're healthy, and you don't want to necessarily be alone for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because you've got a long time to go.
So I wanted to ask you, what do you think the biggest deterrent to women is about dating and going online?
At the first level, what you have is a level of scamminess and sleaziness that is inappropriate. You've got fake profiles. You've got people who lie about being married. You wouldn't believe, I've certainly gotten contacted by several secret agents who aren't really going to have much time, but we might be able to meet up in between missions, You've got fake photographs.
Love it.
It's just, so there's that true garbage level. Once you get past that and you start to meet a few people.
Dating's fun. Let's put it out there. It's fun.
Yes.
It's hard. It takes time. it
Also
you,
increases your longevity because
yeah,
you get interested in life rather than
yeah.
wanting to leave.
I mean, there are a lot of, roadblocks, but
Mhm.
Frank and I suggest, Debbie, that people find a dating buddy, somebody who can support them on their dates, and who they can call
And they
after,
can
and
laugh with and feel
yeah,
sad when someone didn't turn out to be who they are or what
yeah,
they think.
That's a
exactly.
great idea. Yeah, so you don't feel lonely, so it's a journey you're doing with a
And
friend.
make it fun. Make it fun.
The
Make
other
it
thing
fun.
that I want to say to people is that if you've had unsuccessful dating online, don't be afraid to go try it again, and
Okay,
consider yourself, you're becoming a better consumer. You're learning. Take it
You
as a
become a
learning
veteran.
experience. So tell us where people can get your book and your website.
My website is Debbie Weiss Author. My book is on Amazon and available at local bookstores. It recently won an award in a grief category, which I was really
Yay.
excited about.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's available as is. And let's see what else. It is about dating after a 32-year relationship, but it was really about finding my voice and finding myself. And, the best advice I can give, because I wasn't there when my husband died, was to find yourself before you find your person. Because sometimes when we have a loss, you
Wow,
have
that's
to
very important. Yeah.
find yourself again, and then from there find someone else. So my book is dating, but it's really about finding yourself as an individual after loss.
I love it.
Great,
Well,
great.
thank you so much for being on the show, Debbie. You're a delight. And thanks everybody for joining us on this show today. And Frank and I want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.